My name's Ava Lane. At 17, I was told in front of a crowd that I wasn't worth college tuition because my sister had real potential. They all laughed, but one day, they'll be begging for a seat in my office. Before we dive in, where are you watching this from? Drop your country or city in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. I should have known it was a setup the moment I saw Lee in lip gloss. Our school didn't have parent-teacher conferences. We had public performances, especially when Lee was involved. And this one had a full audience, teachers, guidance counselors, and about a dozen board students pretending not to eavesdrop from the lockers. I stood just outside the counselor's office door, listening to my parents' voices rising inside. Something about Lee's internship, her communication skills, and how she just shines when given the right environment. The usual chorus. Then my mother's voice cut sharp and clear. "We're paying for Lee's college because she has real potential. You'll manage." That sentence didn't just land. It detonated. The hallway fell into a hush. My face flushed as if someone had pressed a hot iron against my cheek. From the corner of my eye, I saw people glance my way, then glance away even faster. No one said anything. No one ever did. I walked into the room just as the counselor, Mrs. Fern, was trying to say something soothing about scholarships and every student's journey being unique. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. My father didn't even look up when I entered. He just waved a hand vaguely in my direction. "Ava's always been independent. She'll figure it out. Right, sweetheart." He smiled like that made everything okay. Like I should thank him for giving me permission to struggle alone. Across the table, Lee leaned back in her seat and gave me her signature smile, the kind that always made teachers describe her as charming, and made me feel like I was being eaten alive by glitter. "Don't worry, sis," she said sweetly. "Not everyone is cut out for more." There were a few chuckles from the hallway. Lee had always known how to deliver a line. My fingernails dug into my palm. I didn't say a word, didn't even blink, because if I did speak, I wasn't sure what would come out. And I had no interest in giving them that satisfaction. Instead, I just nodded once, turned on my heel, and walked out of the room. The hall felt longer than usual, the faces blurrier, but my feet moved steady. Past the lockers, past the auditorium, all the way down the east wing where no one ever went after hours. I pushed open the frosted glass door of the school counselor's side office, my unofficial hideout, and sat down hard on the cracked green couch. For a long time, I just stared at the motivational poster on the wall. "Success is the best revenge." I could hear Lee's voice echoing in my head, dripping with superiority. Not everyone is cut out for more. No, maybe not everyone, but I was. I pulled out my phone, hands still shaking slightly, and opened a blank note. I typed 4 words without thinking, "I'll show them all." And as the sun dipped below the school roof and the janitor's cart squeaked down the hall, I sat there and whispered, low and sharp, "I'll show them who's going to manage." There's a particular kind of silence that settles when no one expects anything from you. The summer after junior year, I became a ghost in my own house. Lee floated from photo shoots to agency mixers like a local celebrity, while I stayed in the shadows, barefoot in the hallway, quiet at the dinner table, invisible in my own skin. No one asked what I was working on. They assumed there was nothing to ask about. And that worked just fine for me. Because while Lee's Instagram lit up with photos of coffee shop brainstorms and rooftop strategy sessions, I had found something far more thrilling. An outdated Dell laptop with a noisy fan, a cracked corner, and just enough memory to run Python. I'd never coded before. But that night, when I searched free Python course at 1:43 a.m., something clicked. The logic, the structure, the control. I didn't need anyone's approval or permission. The machine didn't care if I wore makeup, if I stuttered, or if my sister had better hair. It only cared if I got the syntax right. That first week, I failed more than I succeeded. I stayed up until sunrise watching YouTube tutorials with British accents, devoured Reddit threads where strangers argued about the best IDEs, and slowly, so slowly, I started to understand. I taped a schedule to my closet door. 0800, run optional 0900, breakfast plus debug last night's work 10, 00 Course Lesson 12, 00 Lunch/Podcast, Industry 13, 00 Practice Project 16, 00 Review and Plan. Every box was color-coded. Every task had a purpose. No one saw it, but it made me feel alive. Once, around mid-July, I came downstairs to grab a banana during Lee's dinner recap. She was laughing about how her boss called her a marketing unicorn, whatever that meant. My mom looked up briefly. "You don't talk much these days, Ava." I froze. Half a second passed. Then I shrugged. Nothing interesting to report. That was the truth in their language, because they wouldn't have found variable scope or algorithm efficiency interesting. They never did when I tried to explain anything remotely technical in the past. Lee looked at me sideways. "Well, you're good at keeping busy. Must be nice to have all that free time." I bit the inside of my cheek and smiled. "It really is." I left the banana on the counter and went back upstairs. What they didn't know was that I'd already built my first web scraper. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. I was using it to compile internship postings, cross-referencing them with companies that offered merit-based scholarships. I had spreadsheets. I had timelines. I had a plan. And hidden beneath my mattress, I had something else, a thick envelope with the Caltech crest. Accepted. Full ride. Merit-based. Computer science. I didn't tell a soul, because they hadn't asked. Because I wanted them to find out the way they always found out things, too late to take credit. The night Lee posted a picture from her agency's leadership camp, wearing a t-shirt that read, "Future CEO." I didn't even roll my eyes. I just double-clicked my attendance confirmation for Caltech's fall orientation and whispered, "Let her have her hashtags. I'll take reality." The only time I came close to breaking was during a thunderstorm, mid-August. The internet cut out just as I was uploading a mini project to GitHub. I panicked, started pacing the room, muttering every curse I knew under my breath. Then I sat down hard on the floor, laptop in my lap, candle flickering beside me. And I realized something. This fire, this ache, this obsession with learning and building, it didn't come from needing to prove something to them anymore. It came from finally choosing me. The day I graduated college, the sky was bright but not obnoxious, the kind of weather that felt like permission to breathe. I didn't hear my name shouted. No one waved a poster with glitter or stood on a chair to snap a photo as I walked across that polished stage. Just a clean, even voice saying, "Ava Lane, computer science with honors," followed by a polite burst of applause from strangers. That was enough. The campus buzzed with families. Laughter floated in waves. Balloons bounced along the paths tied to picnic chairs, and graduates clung to their parents as if degrees were trophies only valuable once someone clapped for them. I smiled at them genuinely, but I had somewhere else to be. A little cafe 2 blocks from campus. Mellow roast. Hidden from the crowds. Quiet. I slid into my favorite corner booth still in my graduation dress, dark blue with little silver dots like constellations. My black gown was folded next to me, diploma zipped safely into the side pocket of my bag. I pulled out my phone and scrolled the family group chat. Nothing. No proud of you. No congrats, Ava. Not even a mistyped emoji. But at the top of the thread was a picture of Lee, of course, grinning in front of a sleek building with mirrored windows and a bold sign, Altria Marketing Collective. She wore a fitted blazer, arms crossed, chin lifted like a campaign poster. Dad. First day at the new firm. Our girl's a future tech leader. Fire mom. She's a natural. Can't wait to see where this takes her. Lee. Boss moves briefcase person female. The comments below were all friends, aunts, uncles. One of Mom's church friends replied, "Ava must be so inspired to have a sister like Lee." I stared at that message longer than I should have. Then I set the phone down, face down, and picked up my coffee. Across from me, Macy, my roommate since sophomore year, the only person who'd seen both my breakdowns and breakthroughs, blew gently across her iced mocha. "You could have told them," she said. "I could have. You were on the dean's list 7 times, Ava. You spoke at the Women in AI conference. You were offered an invite-only research role your junior year, and now this." She tapped the diploma resting against my side. "You earned all of it. Why not let them in?" I stirred the foam on my latte slowly. Because if they didn't want to see it, why would I force them to? Macy didn't press. She knew me well enough not to. Instead, she slid a small white card across the table. Gold trim. Minimalist font. HarborTech Ventures Danielle Knox, senior recruiter. My fingers brushed it, and for a moment, I saw the entire future stretch out in data packets and server pings. That card wasn't just a job offer. It was validation that someone outside my bloodline had noticed my code, respected my mind. Danielle had slipped it to me after the final project demo, a machine learning model I'd trained to scan company documents for signs of manipulation and internal misconduct. Clean UI, complex backend. My professor said it was brutally efficient. "I'll keep an eye on you," Danielle had whispered. "You're going to disrupt something. I just hope I'm smart enough to stand near you when you do." That meant more than 100 hollow compliments from home. Macy raised her cup. "To what comes next?" I clinked my cup against hers. "To what I'm already building." We sipped in silence as a girl at the next table cried into her mom's shoulder about missing her boyfriend already. Her dad was snapping pictures from every angle. A cousin handed her a handmade scrapbook. I watched, oddly calm. I wasn't bitter. I was relieved. Because this time I didn't want anyone to show up. I didn't need permission to feel proud. I didn't crave a front row audience. I had something better, momentum. After Macy left, I stayed in that cafe another hour, scribbling app designs into a notepad, mapping out a platform, planning features that didn't exist yet. A soft ping vibrated from my phone. Another photo of Lee, now holding a welcome gift basket with her new firm's logo stitched on a hoodie. I smiled faintly, then opened a new folder on my laptop and typed a name, Project Ember. Something no one could take from me. Something that would set fires where no one thought to look. I launched the beta version of my software on a Tuesday. No party, no press release, no name attached. Just a clean landing page, a soft push on a couple developer forums, and one strategic Reddit post under a pseudonym I'd been building credibility for over a year. By Thursday, we hit 10,000 downloads. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even call Macy. I just sat back in the ergonomic chair I couldn't afford 6 months ago and watched the dashboard numbers jump like popcorn. Real-time installs. Positive feedback. No crashes. 0 refund requests. It felt surreal. Like I'd built a rocket and it actually lifted off. Around me, the parking space buzzed with the usual energy. Clicking keyboards, murmured meetings, espresso machines hissing like exclamation points. But no one knew what had just happened. No one looked at me and thought, "She's the reason this floor is about to get very, very loud." I liked it that way. I pulled my hoodie up, kept my head down, and pinged the dev team. "Ava, great job. Ava, we're stable at 10K. Next phase begins Monday. Ava, scalability review call at 3. Be ready. This isn't our ceiling." They responded with GIFs and fire emojis, still under the assumption I was some 30-something named A. Lane, who liked silence and sent pull requests at 2 a.m. I never used my voice on Zoom. I never turned my camera on. None of them knew I was a 21-year-old girl working out of a subleased desk under a company name that technically didn't exist yet. And that was intentional. Because when people think they're talking to a genius, they fill in the details with authority and age. When they know it's a young woman, they get generous with their doubts. Let them underestimate. It made moving in silence easier. Around noon, I wandered to the vending machine for a granola bar and saw a sticky note someone had left. "Free product demo today, 4 p.m. Bring questions." Cute. I glanced around the parking space. Mostly guys, mostly suits. A few scrappy teams pitching beta versions of apps that sounded more like features than companies. Mine wasn't flashy. It was sharp. Useful. A browser-integrated tool that flagged unethical trends in internal communication systems. Think Slack, Microsoft Teams, private email servers. Flagging phrases with a growing AI library I'd trained for 2 years. One early user said it saved their startup from a major HR scandal. Another messaged, "Why hasn't anyone built this before?" That question haunted me. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I did. Because people in power didn't want a tool like this to exist. And yet, there it was, quietly circulating in inboxes, making waves. By 2 p.m., the product had reached 15,000 downloads. That's when I got the email. Subject, saw your launch. Let's talk. From Daniel Bracewell at Lark Capital, VC Body. Congrats on a stellar beta debut. We've had eyes on Emberflag for a while, but this traction is impressive. Are you available to chat this week? We're interested in a conversation, no pressure, just admiration and potential alignment. Best, Daniel Bracewell, founding partner, Lark Capital. I read it twice. Then once more. Lark Capital wasn't small. They backed products like mine when they were whispers and turned them into household names. They were strategic, surgical, and rarely wrong. And they wanted to talk. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I forwarded it to a burner inbox and archived the original. Then I turned off notifications and stood up slowly, letting the moment settle around me like heat. That afternoon, I walked through the coworking space with my headphones in, nodding at people who'd never know they were walking past someone who had just quietly cracked open the door to a secret empire. We weren't done yet. Not even close. It started with a text from Lee. Lee, hey, you should come to my firm's mixer this weekend. Lots of tech folks. Could help you network, winking face, no mention of my company. No idea what I'd built. She still thought I was playing with code in some dusty corner of the internet like a hobbyist, not a founder. Not someone with a standing meeting on Monday with a venture capital firm that had a portfolio worth more than the building she worked in. I stared at the message for a while, thumb hovering. It wasn't even the wink that irritated me. It was the assumption buried underneath it that I still needed her to open doors for me, that I wasn't someone who already had the keys. I replied me. Sure. Sounds fun. And I meant it, not because I needed the party, but because I wanted to see the room, the faces, the people who were supposedly shaping the future of tech, sipping cocktails and swapping buzzwords. Sometimes the best way to study the system is to stand quietly in the middle of it. Saturday night. Downtown. A rooftop venue with tinted glass and neon signage that made the city look like a movie set. Inside, everyone sparkled. Jewel-toned dresses, polished shoes, blazers a bit too tight from confidence or cocktails. Lee spotted me the second I walked in. She breezed over in a teal silk dress and heels so sharp they probably had a kill count. Well, she beamed, looping her arm through mine. Didn't think you'd actually come. You clean up nice. I smiled lightly. Thanks. I'd chosen a simple black dress, nothing designer. No statement necklace, no flashy purse, just quiet elegance. I wasn't here to impress. I was here to witness. Lee gave a little laugh, like we were in on some inside joke. Okay, come with me. There are some people I want you to meet. Big brains. Good opportunities if you listen more than you talk. Classic Lee. She dragged me through the crowd, weaving past clusters of men nodding seriously at each other, and women who looked like they were balancing entire careers on the edge of their lipstick. We stopped in a circle of people near the open bar. A man in a lavender suit was telling a story about a product pivot that saved the whole vertical. Lee interrupted him mid-sentence. Guys, this is my sister, Ava. She reads code for fun or something. It's cute. There it was, the smile, the tiny, pretty knife under the compliment. Laughter rippled through the group. One guy with slicked back hair and a half-empty whiskey glass raised an eyebrow. Wait, are you the one who builds, fan sites or something? No, I said calmly. Another chimed in, smirking. Lee said you were the family cat lady. That's still true. I could feel the sting in my cheeks, but I didn't flinch, I didn't blink. I just tilted my head slightly and took a slow breath. Across the room, I saw two engineers, real ones, leaning over a phone. On the screen, my app, Emberflag. They were demoing it live to a recruiter in glasses and a plum blouse. They didn't know the founder was standing 10 feet away. They didn't know the woman being mocked for reading code for fun was quietly running the architecture that was already rewriting their HR protocols. I looked back at the group. Lee was giggling. She's being modest. Ava's very low-key about her stuff. I smiled. Yeah, it's pretty great. The whiskey guy scoffed. What is? I let the pause bloom. Then I said, soft and steady, being the majority owner of a company half this room is trying to get a job with. Silence. A beat. Then two. Lee blinked. What are you talking about? I turned to her, voice still calm. You told me to come and network, so I came, just didn't think I'd be networking with my users. The recruiter in the plum blouse glanced over, now recognizing my face from the founder's profile she'd pulled up 10 minutes ago. Her eyes widened. Someone else coughed awkwardly. I gave Lee a little nod. Thanks for the invite. You've got good taste in rooms. I just prefer entering through a different door. Then I walked away, slow and deliberate, past the glass wall, past the DJ, past the shocked silence that felt better than applause. The morning after the mixer, I didn't sleep in. By 7:03 a.m., I was already in my office. White walls, corner windows, sunlight pouring over a clean marble desk. The skyline looked different from up here. Smaller. Like the city wasn't a place I belonged to anymore, but something I was quietly folding into my own architecture. I sipped my coffee, black and smooth, and opened the compliance dashboard. One by one, my companies lit up. I wasn't just the founder of Emberflag anymore. After the beta launch went viral, I funneled a portion of the revenue into a holding company, Lanecore Systems, quiet, legal, surgical. Through it, I'd invested in 3 startups, 2 mid-sized tech firms, and 1 marketing company that had recently acquired a boutique agency called Altria, Lee's firm. They were technically now under my umbrella. And for the last month, I'd noticed some oddities. Expense reports bloated with vague charges. Vendor invoices that didn't align. HR complaints marked internal matter resolved with no record of investigation. I didn't need revenge, I needed order. By 8:12, my chief compliance officer walked in, Corey, sharp-eyed and ex-military, not easily rattled. You flagged Altria, he said, frowning. Want to talk me through that? I tapped a few keys and turned my monitor toward him. This, I said, pointing to a spike in discretionary spending. And this, I added, scrolling to the internal communications data, are why we're initiating a full audit. Corey whistled under his breath. You sure that's going to stir some stuff up? Good, I said, folding my hands. We're overdue for a clean house. I didn't mention Lee. It wasn't about her anymore, not directly. It was about the rot I saw in companies just like hers. The way mediocrity got promoted while integrity got buried. The way people like Lee were taught to smile and climb and charm their way upward while the actual builders were left behind. Corey nodded slowly. Want us to start discreet or send a signal? I didn't hesitate. Discreet for now. We didn't need fireworks. We needed precision. By 10:30 a.m., the whispers had started. Altria's HR lead sent a nervous message to one of the partner firms asking if they'd heard about a pending review. The CFO submitted a vacation request for the following week, denied within 30 seconds. I stayed at my desk, calm and quiet, watching the digital ripples spread through the system. Control didn't have to be loud. Sometimes it was as subtle as a line in an audit report. Sometimes it was a woman in a black dress no one took seriously the night before. At noon, I stood by the window as clouds drifted over the city. Lee's office was 12 floors below mine on the other side of the street. She had no idea I could see the reflection of her floor in the adjacent building's glass, a little fishbowl of meetings and nervous glances. She hadn't called yet, but she would. And when she did, I wouldn't answer right away, because this wasn't personal. It was policy. People forget that when you build something from the ground up, quietly, brick by brick, line by line, you see things others miss. You know what integrity looks like. You know what corruption tries to disguise itself as. And when you finally have the power, you use it to clean house. She didn't knock. The door flung open so hard it bounced off the wall behind it. Lee stepped in like a storm, her heels clicking sharp and furious against the polished concrete floor. I didn't flinch. I didn't rise. I just looked up from my monitor and sipped my coffee. She stood there, framed by the glass walls, chest heaving beneath a blazer that was slightly wrinkled. She hadn't even paused long enough to fix it. You're trying to ruin me. Not a question, an accusation. I set the mug down and leaned back slightly in my chair. Good morning to you, too. She didn't smile. Her mascara was smudged just enough to make her look wild around the eyes, like she hadn't slept. Her phone was clutched tightly in her right hand, the screen still lit, probably mid-text from someone panicking downstairs. They told me this came from a holding company, she said, voice trembling, and then your name popped up. I nodded once. Correct. Her eyes narrowed. Why? The pause that followed was intentional. Then I said calmly, because I care about the companies I invest in, and I don't tolerate unethical behavior. Something's wrong at Altria. Her jaw clenched. You're just doing this because of last night. I started the audit days before the party, I said, voice even. This has nothing to do with a joke at a mixer. She blinked. So you're not even mad? I tilted my head. Should I be? Lee's composure wavered. She'd come in expecting a revenge monologue, expected fire, fury, some emotional meltdown that she could hold against me later. Instead, she'd walked into a marble office, a sunlit skyline, and a sister she no longer recognized. You're going to destroy me, she whispered. No, I said. I'm going to protect my investment, and if that means cleaning house, I will. Her voice cracked. You don't care if I lose my job? I stood then, not fast, not loud, just enough to make her realize I didn't need to raise my voice to own the space. You laughed at me in front of a room of strangers, I said. Told people I was the family loser, that I read code for fun, that I wasn't earning anything. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like she was remembering it in real time. But I didn't come here to fire you, Lee, I added. I came here to fix the culture that allowed people like you to rise without accountability. Her face flushed. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's not. She stared at me, silent, and for the first time in years she looked small, not in stature, in presence. Then my desk phone buzzed. I pressed the speaker button. Yes, my assistant's voice came through. Your father's on the line, says it's urgent. Of course, I glanced at Lee. She didn't meet my eyes. Patch him through, I said. There was a brief click, then his voice came over the speaker, booming, familiar, already agitated. Ava, what the hell are you doing? I didn't sit down. I didn't blink. I'm doing my job, I said. Cleaning up an operation that's been bleeding integrity for months. This affects your sister, he snapped. You're going to destroy the family's chances. Her career. You destroyed mine, I said, cutting him off. A long time ago, when you decided only one of your daughters mattered. Silence, a long, heavy silence. Then he said, softer, you're being emotional. No, I replied, I'm being surgical. I ended the call with a quiet click. Lee looked up slowly. You really don't care what they think anymore, do you? I exhaled. I stopped needing their permission the moment I stopped asking for it. She didn't speak again. Instead, she turned and walked out, slower than she entered. No door slammed this time. Just the sound of her heels growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. I sat back down, turned my screen toward the compliance report again, and picked up where I left off. It wasn't about revenge. It was about rebuilding something better, starting from the rot they all thought no one would notice. The first time I met Altria's CEO, he called me young lady without looking up from his phone. That was 6 months ago, before the acquisition, before he knew who I really was. Back then, I was just another investor dialing in under a generic Zoom username with a muted mic and a sharp agenda. He talked over me, laughed at his own buzzwords, and called Lee a promising firecracker. Today, I walked into his office without an appointment. He looked up mid-sentence, clearly annoyed, then froze. Ms. Lane, he said, standing quickly. I didn't expect, what brings you in? His name was Gerald Marcus. Mid-50s. Navy suit, expensive tie, that corporate kind of tan you only get between golf rounds and investor calls. He always wore a lapel pin shaped like a key. Subtle, self-assured. The kind of man who built a culture that rewarded confidence over competence. I didn't sit down. I'm here to talk about the audit, I said. And what happens next? His smile tightened. Of course. We've been reviewing the notes, standard variants, I'm sure. These things always look messier than they are at first glance. I set a folder on his desk. There are 12 incidents flagged. 7 involve ethical violations, 4 border on legal risk. 1 is already being reviewed by federal regulators. These are not variances, this is decay. He opened the folder, scanned the first page, and paled. I waited. He cleared his throat. This isn't the kind of thing we usually escalate so aggressively. Perhaps we could have legals scrub this down before. I already have, I interrupted. 3 firms, independently. They all recommended the same thing: remove the leadership team responsible, restructure internal accountability, and establish a new ethical oversight board within 30 days. Gerald blinked. That's pretty extreme. It's necessary. He leaned back, trying to reclaim control. Look, I understand your concern, but with all due respect, you're not in a position to dictate operational changes. You're a majority owner, I said flatly. Silence. I own 56% of this company, I continued. Through lane core systems, that gives me the legal authority to restructure leadership, terminate contracts, and implement governance changes as I see fit. His mouth opened, then closed. I let the silence hang. Let it sting. I tried to stay quiet, I said, to invest without interfering. But when your employees come forward anonymously, when the data confirms a pattern of negligence, and when the people I trust to lead start hiding rot under quarterly reports, that's when I stop watching. Gerald looked down at the folder again. He tapped his fingers nervously on the desk. I built this company from scratch, he said softly. No, I said. You built a company that looked good from the outside. Now I'm building one that works from the inside. He looked up, something like respect or fear settling behind his eyes. What do you want me to do? Step aside, I said. Transition into an advisory role effective immediately. And if I refuse, I leaned in, voice steady, then tomorrow every employee in this building gets an internal email with the full audit summary, transparency clause, my legal right. He didn't move for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You're not what I expected, Ava. That's the point. By the end of the day, the company had a new interim CEO, someone I trusted from one of my earliest dev teams. The compliance memo went out at 5:01 p.m. sharp. No names, just policy changes, a reset. At 6:00 p.m., a senior developer from Altria messaged me privately. I've waited years for someone to call this out. People like you should have been leading from the beginning. I read it 3 times before replying. Now we are. The boardroom was too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't come from calm, but from anticipation. Tension hummed beneath the polished table like static electricity, everyone pretending to sip their coffee while watching each other out of the corners of their eyes. They all knew something was coming. They just didn't know who would survive it. I stood at the head of the table, not in a power suit or heels, just a tailored black blazer over a navy blouse, flats, and a calm expression. No clickbait, no flash, just clarity. To my left sat Gerald Marcus, now officially strategic advisor, his pin conspicuously absent from his lapel. To my right, the new interim CEO, quietly reviewing a folder I'd handed him 10 minutes earlier. And across from me, Lee. She hadn't said a word since she walked in. She was dressed perfectly, as always. Soft curls, crisp blazer, designer watch glinting under the lights, but her shoulders were tense. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. She knew. And still, she was hoping I wouldn't. Before we begin, I said, voice steady, there are 2 leadership matters that need to be addressed. The room stilled. First, I turned to the man seated at the far end, Ethan Rowe, the head of strategic operations. Mid-30s, quick with sarcasm, loved to brag about his efficiency in handling complaints. He was the one who'd laughed the loudest at that mixer, called me the family loser. Mr. Rowe, I began. You've been with this company 5 years. He nodded, lips tight. That's right. And in that time, you've overseen multiple internal reports, HR transitions, and vendor reviews. Also correct. I opened the folder in front of me and slid a paper across the table. This is a summary of falsified compliance sign-offs and silenced ethics flags traced back to your division. 3 within the last year, 2 as recent as last quarter. He stiffened. With all due respect, I cut in, is earned, not requested. Gasps echoed around the table. Ethan blinked. You are being terminated effective immediately. Your access credentials have already been revoked. A severance meeting has been scheduled for this afternoon. His mouth opened. No sound came out. I nodded to security. 2 plainclothes officers appeared almost like ghosts from the hallway and stood at the door. Ethan stood, jaw locked, nostrils flared, but said nothing. He stormed out. The room buzzed in his wake. Chairs shifted. Eyes darted. And then they all turned to Lee. She had stopped breathing for a second. I could see it, how still she went. Her spine straightened. Her hands rested perfectly in her lap like they were trained to. Next, I said, is Lee Lane. I heard the flicker of her inhale, sharp, controlled. I turned to her directly. In your position as senior marketing lead, you were responsible for mentoring new staff, overseeing team culture, and ensuring alignment with company values. I did, she said quietly. I tried. You called a junior hire a waste of salary in a public Slack channel, I said. You were recorded mocking another employee's accent, and you repeatedly dismissed diversity training as branding fluff. A wave of discomfort moved across the table. Some averted their eyes, others simply stared. You're being removed from your leadership position, I said. Effective today. Lee's hands twitched. You can't do this. I'm not punishing you, I said gently. I'm protecting the standard we're building, and right now you don't meet it. Her eyes glistened. Her jaw trembled, but she didn't speak. This isn't personal, Lee, I said, quieter now. It's procedural. You had every opportunity to lead with integrity. Instead, you chose to coast on charm and proximity. She swallowed hard, blinking quickly. What happens to me now? You're still employed for now, but you'll be reassigned, non-managerial. You'll earn back trust if you want to. Silence said everything. Then I turned back to the room. This company is changing, I said. From today forward, mentorship replaces mockery. Integrity replaces politics. If that scares you, this is your chance to step out. No one moved. I didn't come here to shake things up. I came to clean house. We've protected the wrong people for too long. Now we're building something worth standing for. And just like that, the power in the room shifted. Not with shouting, not with theatrics, with truth, with standards, with me. 2 days after the boardroom shifted beneath my feet, my inbox lit up at 7:42 p.m. I almost missed it. I'd been reviewing a UX redesign proposal for one of our partner apps, half listening to lo-fi music, letting the stillness settle in like warm water. Then I saw its subject line. Thank you. The sender's name barely registered at first. Nadia H., product intern. I opened it. Hi, Ava. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been working here for 9 months. I came in hopeful, and within 3 weeks I was drowning in imposter syndrome. I watched people get promoted for charm, not contribution. I watched managers joke about layoffs like it was a drinking game. I almost quit last week. And then I saw you in that meeting. I watched you remove people no one thought could be touched. I watched you speak with calm, not cruelty. That room was different because of you. I stayed because of you. Just thank you. Nadia, I read it twice. Then I sat back in my chair and stared out the window. It was dusk. The city had softened into shadows, windows flickering on like fireflies. Cars moved in hushed rows below, but up here, it was quiet. I had waited years to be seen. And now, a girl I didn't know had just reminded me why I fought so hard to get here. It wasn't about showing up the people who doubted me. It was about giving someone else a reason not to doubt themselves. I was still rereading her words when the knock came. 3 soft taps. I knew before I opened the door. Lee stood there, mascara streaked, lips pressed into a tight line. She didn't have her usual glossed perfection. Her blouse was wrinkled. Her shoes didn't match her belt. Her hair was pulled back like she'd given up halfway through fixing it. She looked like someone who had finally stopped performing. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. I was wrong, she said, voice barely above a whisper. There was no audience this time. No party, no smirking circle of colleagues, just the 2 of us alone in the soft hum of my office hallway. I stepped back and let her in. She didn't sit, just stood in the center of the room, arms loose at her sides like she didn't know what to do with her own body. I was so sure I was doing everything right, she said. That I was playing the game the way we were taught. Look sharp, smile often, network more than you think you should. She exhaled, shaky. I thought success meant being liked, not being fair. I thought integrity was a bonus, not a baseline. I watched her, heart tight but unreadable. For once, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted truth. She looked up, eyes red. I didn't just laugh at you at that party. I did it for years, at home, at school. I let them think less of you so they'd think more of me. I needed their approval more than I needed to be decent. Silence. Then slowly, she said, but you were always the one building something real. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Years of rage, loneliness, dismissal, they sat there behind my ribs, buzzing like electricity, but I didn't let it speak first. Instead, I said, you have one chance. She blinked. 1, I repeated. To prove that you're not who you were, to show up differently, to work not for titles, not for applause, just to fix what you helped break. Lee's breath caught. She nodded fast. I will, she said. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need to earn something. I watched her for a long moment. Then I walked over to my desk, pulled out a staff transition file, and handed it to her. New role, I said. No team, no direct reports, just work. She took it like it weighed more than it should. As she walked to the door, she paused. Why give me the chance? I didn't smile, but my voice softened. Because someone gave it to me once, and because I'd rather build than burn. She left without another word. And for the first time, I felt like we were finally speaking the same language. Lee showed up early on Monday, not 5 minutes early. 40. I wasn't there yet. My assistant texted me as soon as she arrived, her heels echoing through the near-empty floor as she paced the carpet, clutching the transition file I'd handed her like a lifeline. She didn't ask for coffee. She didn't flirt with the elevator guy or chat with reception like she used to. She just sat down in the open workspace she'd been assigned. No nameplate, no title, and started reading through policy documentation like it was a novel. I watched her from the second-floor mezzanine when I arrived. She didn't see me, but I saw her tuck her phone away when it buzzed. I saw her say no to lunch invites. I saw her take notes during onboarding sessions she probably thought she was too good for just a week ago. It would have been easy to say it was all an act, that she was performing a temporary humility, hoping it might earn her way back to comfort. But something in her movement said otherwise. There was no flair, no waiting for someone to notice her effort, just quiet work. She clocked out late that night. I passed her on the way to the elevator, and she didn't make eye contact. She didn't smile or drop some carefully worded, self-deprecating comment. She just nodded once, and that, somehow, felt more honest than any apology. By the end of the week, she'd rewritten a vendor outreach script that cut unnecessary fluff and actually sounded human. One of the junior content creators said she offered to help draft a pitch deck, no credit asked, just edits tracked and sent back. I didn't tell her I noticed. That wasn't the point. Some people respond to power by demanding more of it. Others, they finally understand how fragile it is and begin handling it with care. Lee was beginning to look like the latter. Still, I didn't move her back up. I didn't praise her. I didn't clear a path. I just watched. Think she'll last? My assistant asked over lunch one day. She might, I said. It wasn't a prediction. It was a possibility. And in this business, that was enough to matter. Meanwhile, toxicity bled out of the company like old ink. The department that used to pass around worst client of the week memes went quiet. HR began publishing monthly transparency reports. 3 women from design sent a joint email requesting a meeting to talk about mentorship programs for interns. And at the next leadership check-in, no one talked over each other. Small shifts, nothing headline-worthy, but everything felt lighter. That weekend, I opened a news blog just to kill time and saw a trending article. Young founder reshapes corporate culture with code and consequence. They didn't mention my name, just Ember Flag. That was perfect. Because sometimes the best legacy isn't being seen. It's watching something better grow because you stayed when no one else did. The stage lights were hotter than I expected. Rows of seats faded into darkness beyond the front row, where a dozen executives sat upright with practiced smiles, holding branded notepads they wouldn't write on. Behind them, hundreds more filled the tech conference hall, murmuring, tapping their phones, waiting for the next speaker. Me. I stepped up to the mic, heels steady, heart calm, not nervous, not anymore. The projection screen behind me lit up with a single line in white text. The people who underestimate you will teach you how to rise. I looked out at the crowd, and there they were, my parents, front row, far right. My mother's hands clutched a small leather purse. My father's jaw was tight, eyes locked on me like he wasn't sure if he should be proud or apologetic. Beside them sat Lee. No heels, no spotlight hunger. Just a plain gray blouse, a notebook on her lap, and her hands folded like she didn't quite believe she belonged here yet. But she was willing to earn it. I began. When I was 17, I said, I stood in a hallway while my parents explained to a room full of people why I wasn't worth investing in. A few heads turned. A few pens paused. I was told I would manage, that my potential didn't look like someone else's definition of promise. I remember the silence that followed. I remember walking into the school counselor's office and whispering something to myself that I never forgot. I glanced at the first row, and for the first time, my mother looked away. I said, "I'll show them who's going to manage." A soft ripple of laughter moved through the room, not mocking, just knowing. I let it fade before continuing. "But today's not about revenge," I said. "It's about resilience, about what we build when no one claps and we're the only ones who believe in what we're making." I walked a few steps across the stage, arms relaxed at my sides. I learned to code with free courses and silence. I launched my first product from a parking space no one noticed. I built a company before I had a college degree. And I did all of that not because I had something to prove, I paused, but because I knew what it felt like to be underestimated. There it was, the stillness, the kind that fills a room like gravity. I held it for just a second longer before saying, "In this company, we don't mock, we mentor, we correct, and we grow. We believe that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice, but the one willing to speak last after listening." A slow wave of applause started, soft at first, then building. My eyes flicked again to the front row. My father was clapping. Lee was already on her feet. And my mother, she was crying, not loudly, not dramatically. Just the quiet kind, where someone's expression breaks in a way they can't stop, because the truth finally got louder than their excuses. I stepped back from the mic, nodded once, and walked off stage. And in that moment, no title, no data point, no headline could have made me feel more powerful, because I hadn't just risen. I'd rebuilt the ground I stood on. A year later, the office didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a workshop, ideas in motion, laughter in the break room, soft music playing in one corner, the scent of someone's favorite candles burned gently near the reception desk. Someone had even started a gratitude wall with sticky notes, things like, "Shout out to Jess for helping with the pitch deck laptop computer. First time I've spoken in a meeting without panic." I've never felt safer to be myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that was enough. The company had grown, 2 new markets, 1 major nonprofit partnership, and a mentoring program we'd quietly launched that now matched first-gen coders with leaders from our dev team. Every Thursday, I walked through the glass atrium and past a room filled with interns, notebooks open, eyes wide. I always slowed just a bit, watching the future take shape in people who reminded me of me. Lee now headed HR, not because I gave it to her, because she earned it. It took 10 months. She didn't ask for promotions. She didn't drop hints or angle for favor. She just showed up early, prepared, quiet. She listened before responding. She let her team speak first. And when the former HR director resigned to launch a wellness startup, Lee was the obvious choice. I approved it without fanfare. She cried when I told her. I didn't. But we hugged for the first time in years. Our parents visited once after that. For brunch. No speeches, no apologies. Just eggs and coffee and conversation that wasn't wrapped in comparison or tension. We talked about books. They asked questions about my work, not performative ones, but real interested ones. When they left, my mother kissed my cheek and said, "I didn't understand what you were building back then, but I see it now." I didn't say anything. Some truths don't need responses. They just need space. And that's what the year had become, space. To grow, to recover, to build something different. I kept the email from Nadia pinned at the top of my inbox. She's a junior developer now. Still sends me the occasional message, usually 1 line long. Still building, still staying. We all were. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like enough.